What's going on, gamers? So I was gonna do a video on this yesterday, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just wait. Um, so we're gonna do it now. So in this video, we're gonna see another PlayStation port go to PC by Nix's again, right? And this is supposed to be Sony's flagship, right? You know what I mean? Like this is one of their Hall of Fame type of IPs, and you would think that everything would be better now, right? Because of their track record this year. They have the worst track record this year by a mile. Nobody comes close. Yeah, there was some negative press lately with Nintendo, but that's based off of pricing, which they can adjust. Hopefully they do, right? But with Sony, it's like every category, everything has just been negative, right? Then you see Microsoft make a positive change lately from the gaming front, though they still have a long way to go too, because it's like now you're doing something positive this year where you look like your gaming is doing much better than PlayStation's, but that's 1 year. So you got to do this like 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row. You know what I mean? Um, but Sony, oh my God. Yeah, Digital Foundry, I see it right here. It says, we're disappointed on the PlayStation 5 Last of Us 2 PC port. And I was doing some reading on this too about how people were using cards that should be running the game a lot better than PS4 Pro or PS4 settings, but yet that's not the case. So we're going to find that out in this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. All right, let's go. Ponies, sit down.
With The Last of Us Part 2 on PC at launch, things are better than the disastrous Last of Us Part 1 remastered PC port, which is nice, but at the same time,
Like you said, if y'all didn't know, man, like let me turn this up. The PlayStation PC ports lately have not been good, and this is not good because you're trying to build a reputation here. I don't understand.
there are a number of technical continuities with that release that drag the package down. Nixies has come in here later in the development of this port to add in their own twist, but still some things appear taken wholesale from the previous porting efforts handled by Iron Galaxy. That continuity is plainly obvious in the game's graphical options menu. At first glance, you might think, hey, this looks different than what I saw in the Iron Galaxy port of The Last of Us Part 1, but that is purely on the UI there. By clicking on each graphical option, you can see how it unfolds. A sub-menu, which when all clicked out, basically map over to those same settings we saw in Part 1's port. Going over the display options, we can see some continuities with Part 1 as well, but there are some newer things. DLSS frame generation is in, and dynamic resolution scaling is coming in from those Nixies libraries. The amount of options on the surface level might seem like it is good because you can tweak to your own liking, and that is true, but much like the Iron Galaxy's Uncharted 4 port and the port of Part 1, scaling over PlayStation 5 here is very minimal. As an example of something that scales higher than PS5, you have screen space shadows, which were not present on that platform. Here you can see them adding in more shadows, purely in screen space, to the area underneath the fence here, and we can also see that the character shadow here up close for the main character is higher quality on PC due to the addition of a contact shadow setting, which here has been set to very high. So in general, I would say shadows is the area where you get the biggest quality upgrade in this game, but the rest is very similar to what you would find on the PlayStation 4 or 5.
That's not good.
So a lot of things are consistent with the work that we saw from the ports from Iron Galaxy, and the most consistent thing I would say is actually GPU performance. When The Last of Us Part 1 launched on PC and even later on, I lamented that the amount of hardware you needed to have to get PlayStation level performance was a wide outlier in comparison to any and every other game I've possibly ever reviewed on PC. Part 2 continues that tradition. The official specs recommend an RTX 3060 for 1080p 60 at medium settings, but you might be surprised what medium settings actually means.
That's crazy considering that it launched on PS4.
Looking at the main menu, one thing that's easy to see is that medium settings are actually worse than the quality of the game's graphics as found on base PlayStation 4. SSR is quite worse here, showing big full-size cross-hatching in screen space just not seen in the PlayStation 4 base version. SSR in this case is actually more similar to the high setting on PC. A number of other things in that medium preset are worse than base PlayStation 4, such as flashlight bounce lighting and subsurface scattering and more. So
This is what I'm talking about. Like, why are we getting this type of optimization? That's crazy. The Switch 2 will be able to run this game much better, though it's more powerful than a PS4 easily. In handheld mode, it's more. It's right around it. But yeah, I don't understand why a 3060 on a PC right now would not be able to easily outperform the PS4 version in image clarity. It says a lot about them having issues with the PC optimization. Just because you optimize perfectly for PlayStation your whole entire life, Naughty Dog found this out with Last of Us 1, does not mean that when you go to PC, it's just going to be the same. It's not. And then even then, it's like, why release that? Why not do tests first and then try to get the best port? This is what I mean about the way they handle their IPs. It's should be done better than this.
So that means the port will give you noticeably worse graphics than the PS4 base at 1080p 60 on an RTX 3060, according to their own spec sheet. When punching in the settings that give you the greatest equivalency to PlayStation 4's quality, you might be surprised at what the actual level of GPU and CPU are necessary there to just even double that level of performance. I didn't play through the game on a high-end PC for this review, rather on that targeted RTX 3060 platform for their medium settings. And when I targeted 1080p 60, using those PS4 settings, I found that many scenes are actually below 60 FPS on that PC due to the GPU being tapped out. It could, of course, hold 60 over extended periods of time when I'm using VSync here, and that is nice, but it definitely faltered more often than I would have really hoped in reaching 60 FPS at a mere 1080p. The reason why I really want to highlight this out on this PC specifically here is to talk about how I find the game's GPU resources necessary are a bit inordinate. A PS
It's smart for them to scale down and go for that medium setting. It's like he said, it will tell you a lot. And then you see that it's not really even outperforming the PlayStation 4 in certain aspects. Like, wait, the PlayStation 4 had like 1.8 teraflops. So, you know what I mean? And like the CPU in there and the RAM in there, it's like, wait, what? It's only like 8 gigs, right? Or whatever. And the CPU is like just the Ryzen. It's like I don't get how the 3060 Ryzen 5 3600 setup with 16 gigs would not blow past that.
PS4 GPU has about 1.84 teraflops of theoretical
Yeah.
compute and 176 gigabytes per second of bandwidth, whereas a RTX 3060 has 12.74 teraflops and 360 gigabytes per second of bandwidth. Over a fast
This is what I'm saying. Like, this is not a competition. This gives you the idea of what was going on with the 360 optimization. Not 360, but the Xbox Series X at the beginning. I'm trying to tell y'all, look, if things are not optimized well, none of the engine, none of that means anything. If people know how to optimize their game well, a game can run well everywhere. It's not a this generation, the hugest problem is unfinished, unoptimized aspects, rushed pronouns, all this stupid stuff, and then getting people hired that do not know how to do stuff to where it's like, I'm sending you the PC port to where you have this, but this is gonna look better. It's like, oh my god, this is not like math is telling you right here. There's no arguing. This is Nix's fault. This is a Nix's problem. This is a Sony issue. They chose them once again. So yeah, this shouldn't be happening.
faster PCIe 4 bus with a much higher fill rate. Even ignoring flopflation from dual issue FP32 on Ampere GPUs,
Do we see this memory bandwidth difference too? It's literally double the memory bandwidth of the GPU. 9, 10 times damn near here, the power. The pixel fill rate, the texture fill rate. I mean, no.
we should be looking at a GPU that is around 3.5 times more performant in compute, even at its non-boosted clocks. Yet the RTX 3060 cannot fully double the PS4's performance in this game at the closest equivalent settings. This is a very large outlier in our history of examining PC ports. Whether or not that's justified is up to the jury, but that means you as a user will have to adjust your expectations according. You really don't want to drop below those PS4 settings as I see it, as you're getting a visual experience worse than a 12-year-old console at that point. But if you want those visuals at 60 FPS and above, you'll have to be pushing much bigger hardware here in this title than you possibly have ever been used to doing before.
You see that? That's the problem with stuff this generation. They make you think you need these cards when really it's a scam because it's like, no, 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 you're just not optimizing well. All of the tech has always been good. This is not a technology problem. This is not, I need a Series X mid-gen upgrade. I need a $2,500 PC. No, 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 no. It's on their side and what they're doing. And it just makes you think you need to go get that when really you're equipped just fine. The Switch 2 can run this game 4K 60 frames. Well, I know how I know that because the PS5 Pro could, damn near. The PS5 did easily. The Series S should be able to run this game at 4K 60. Because them and the Switch 2 damn near almost around the same. Except the difference is NVIDIA technology. And that's what they're using over here. And somehow with NVIDIA technology, you're getting worse. Yeah, something's wrong. It has nothing to do with PC. It has everything to do with Nix's and Sony.
This also applies to the CPU side of things, although it is indeed better than the port of The Last of Us Part 1. Nixies has come in here to change how streaming is done, utilizing direct storage CPU decompression with a different compression format. And they have made it so that the engine no longer spin locks CPU threads, which you may know is a huge no-no on Windows. So the CPU will not be faltering nearly as much as it did in that Last of Us Part 1 port for doing simple things, but it's still kind of inordinately demanding given the visuals at times in comparison to other games you may be used to playing on PC. A contributing factor to this is the newest thing in the game, and that is the way shaders are compiled. This is very different than The Last of Us Part 1 and other Naughty Dog games on PC, where there the PSO compilation would happen in the menu over many minutes. In Part 2, only a brief amount of compilation occurs when you load the game, and then the rest of the shader pre-compilation occurs asynchronously as the game world streams in while playing the game. As new objects are loaded in to memory as you move forward, the associated shaders start pre-compiling before those objects and materials are visible, and this happens on background, less utilized threads. The behavior you will constantly see while playing the game is like this. You move forward in some loading corridor that is rather barren. You know, something like you'd find in Half-Life 2. Then the loading occurs in this area when you cross an invisible line. And all of a sudden you can see how your CPU threads start getting nearly fully maxed out. On the Ryzen 5 3600, you could see this occurring over around a 20-second period of time as PSOs are crunched in the background. I find this behavior nice in that you do not have to wait in the menu anymore for it to be done, but it definitely has performance consequences that I will talk about. But even without talking about asynchronous PSO compilations effect on performance, you can see how the game has loading behavior that negatively affects performance. To isolate that behavior from PSO compilation, I'm running through the game in areas that I've already beaten or traversed before. And even while doing that, with no PSOs compiling the background, we can see how there are frame time hitches and erratic frame times on a CPU like the Ryzen 5 3600. As I'm crossing this field here, we can see how there are consistent frame time spikes into the 25 millisecond region and some occasional frame time spikes above 33.3 milliseconds. The basic loading behavior in the game is strangely heavy on the CPU given this game's vintage, honestly. Forget not, it was originally designed around a 1.6 GHz tablet CPU with a 5400 RPM hard drive that would need to spin up. Yet loading in the game seems oddly immediate when it occurs and not very spread out. And I think it's harming frame times as a result. This is what the frame times look in an area that I've already ran through, so all the PSOs are precompiled. And that is not actually how it plays the first time you run through an area. The first time when you run through an area, the frame time effect of loading combines with the frame time effect of PSOs being asynchronously compiled. And this makes the game have even more erratic frame times. Like here, as we can see when I'm running through this area with Abby. Frame times are more erratic there, and there are multiple bounces above 30 milliseconds. Basically, in spite of Nixie's plumbing here, The Last of Us Part 2 still has loading behavior which negatively affects frame times, causing hitches, and they are pretty commonly found throughout much of the experience. A Ryzen 5 3600 is indeed a lot more powerful than a PS4 CPU, so I was kind of surprised to see it there, but it also affected larger CPUs. Based upon what DF contributor Mohammed has told me, these frame time spikes also occur on a Ryzen 5700 X3D, and running through this area on the 9800 X3D with a PC PCIe 4 NVMe drive, I could also see frame time hitches occurring. Beyond frame time hitching across all CPUs, I also saw some strange behavior occasionally. On the Ryzen 5 3600, I did have 2 instances where the game completely stopped for a moment and then started up again, essentially a 0 FPS stall. The same actually also occurred on the Steam Deck when playing there too, a large 0 FPS stall that I'm not exactly sure what caused. On
Are you sure? And if you see, this is going to run at 720p on the Steam Deck.
Ryzen 7 9800 X3D, we also saw bigger stalls when running around. Once again, I'm kind of wondering what is causing it. Staying with that processor though for a bit, another thing that we at DF noticed is that the latest X3D processors from AMD seem to have very depressed performance in the game than what you would expect. Running around this area that I'm showing off, there's around an 83 FPS average. And that is not just some test setup issue. On a completely different motherboard and RAM combo, the 9800 X3D was CPU limited also to around 80.
Bro, he's using the Ryzen 7 9800 X3D and a 5090 and getting 83 frames. That's fucking terrible. What? Oh man, this is badly optimized.
5 FPS in this scene. The FPS is bizarrely constant, with it only outperforming the Ryzen 5 3600 by around 25% in the scene, when it is usually around 200 to 300% faster.
Yeah.
Most of the CPU is sitting idle here, and it is a far cry from the absolute maxing out of the CPU that we see on the Ryzen 5 3600, or as I see on the Steam Deck. As briefly shown off earlier, the Steam Deck here has its own profile and settings that loads up with the game and is quite nice to see. Though I would say the performance is not exactly the greatest. Even using GameScope to limit the FPS, the game has trouble locking to 30 with some rough frame pacing and many long frames that are 66 milliseconds or even higher. The basic issue for me is that the camera is not very smooth as a result of frame time issues, and this makes the game look jerky even if the FPS is nominally held at 30 quite well enough. Given the CPU performance I'm detailing here, I definitely recommend frame capping in this game like I would.
Yeah, no thanks. I just played my PlayStation 5 version, which I did at 4K 60. I mean, that's because I've already owned it, but you know, this is obviously a problem with them optimizing on PC. There's no other discussion. That's exactly what this is. Anybody who thinks anything else and defends it is clearly deluded.
Would recommend in almost any game. Using 60Hz VSync, for example, on a Ryzen 5 3600 gives the CPU enough breathing room and time with the buffering of frames to run through this area, keeping 60 FPS nearly the entire time, with many of the frame time spikes hammered away. This means.
So we get the idea here. I mean, he just showed literally almost the best processor from AMD with the 5090. And the performance increase was like 20 to 25. It should be like 200%. But we're not saying that. We should have saw 170, 180 frames. You know what I mean? It's like stuff like that. That's really like, okay, this is a really, really good port here. But when you're seeing something under 100 like that, with like the best technology, that's where you're like, wait, hold on, this is a PS4 game. It's not a game that just launched, right? And I can't even get the settings that I want. Yeah, that's absolutely terrible. The Steam Deck version should be running better than that. You just know what the PS4 technology was, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, what are we doing here a decade plus later, right? But this is the type of stuff we're dealing with today, everywhere. All right, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think. Ponies, sit down. All right, y'all. Peace out.